Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lindsay, a member of the CK-12 team, and my colleague Carl and I will be running today's webinar, Strategies for Using CK-12. We are so glad that you've all joined us. Many of you are participating in the CK-12 Certified Educator Program. So to any of you who've been with us for the past couple of weeks for our series of webinars, welcome back. A reminder that if you are wrapping up your certification, that these are the program requirements, that you join the program and you watch 2 on-demand sessions. You then will have attended 3 core live webinars. This is the 3rd of those core webinars. The one offered a couple weeks ago was the FlexBook 2.0 platform, and the one offered last week was customizing adaptive practice and FlexBooks. And then this is the 3rd one that's required. So if you've attended the 3 live webinars, watched the 2 on-demand webinars, you can complete the 5 matching assignments in our CEP coursebook, and then you're able to request your certification. Now, many of you have no idea what I'm talking about. You're just here to learn strategies, and that's totally fine too. Welcome to all of you who are just here to attend the webinar. There's probably a few of you who are in that gray area of you've participated a little in the Certified Educator Program, but now you're kind of confused because we're changing the program over of what you need to do. We do have Katie and Star and Tuscany here to answer some questions for you in the Q&A window if you have questions about certification. But basically, we are relaunching this program in August with new requirements. So if you have not attended the 3 core live webinars, then you won't be completing Certified Educator Program on this current cycle. You'll want to wait until August and join us for the newly revamped self-paced program. So again, we can talk more about that later on, and you're welcome to type in questions in the Q&A. That was just a heads up at the beginning. We are going to use 2 windows in Zoom today. We're going to use the Q&A window and the chat window. The Q&A window is where we would like you to type any questions you have that you want the CK-12 team to answer. Like I said, our team's going to be typing answers to some of those. They're going to be flagging some of the questions that Carl will then answer live or do in a demo. The chat window, that's your place for a community conversation. You guys are already doing an awesome job with that. Introducing yourselves, telling us where you're from. I mean, there are people from all over the world joining us today. I think I saw Costa Rica, Albania, Oakland, Kentucky, Monterey, Mexico, all over. So please converse amongst yourselves over there in that chat window. Just make sure that you are changing it to say all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see what you're posting. If it's just going to the panelists, that's just CK-12 who can see your post. I do want to mention that we are recording this webinar, and it will be available within 24 hours on our ck12.org/webinars page. So if you are somebody who needs to go back and rewatch, or you're wanting to take a copy of this video and share it with a colleague, that will be available. A couple other things I want to mention is that we have 2 resource pages that might be helpful to you as you're thinking about strategies for this upcoming school year. They're tiny URL links, and somebody on my team will probably post those into the chat window here in a moment. But the first one's tinyurl.com/CK12strategies2019. And the second one is tinyurl.com CK12 PLIX Sims 2019. And these are just resource pages that you're welcome to download, save to your desktop, print off for reference later on. Just might be helpful for you as you're exploring and learning more about CK-12. All right, let's talk about what you're going to learn today. With our FlexBook 2.0 platform, you have the tools and resources all in one place to plan and customize, to deliver and differentiate, to assess and remediate. So with that in mind, we'll be covering strategies within each of those areas. First, we're going to talk about designing your classes and assignments using CK-12 resources as supplemental or core curriculum, ways to customize CK-12 to meet your needs, and integrating related content throughout your FlexBooks and lessons. Then we'll go into ways to differentiate and support learning at all levels using CK-12 classes, innate components of our offerings, and literacy tools. Then we'll wrap up with ways to use CK-12 to assess learning, monitor progress, and remediate when needed. Our main goal is that by the end of the session, you come away with specific and actionable strategies you can use immediately to engage your students using CK-12 resources. One last thing before we really get going here is we're going to launch a poll, and we would just love to get your feedback to 2 questions that we have posted. The first one that you're going to see here in just a second, if we can get the poll launched. I can't see if it's launched. Ah, there it is. I see it now. You should be seeing a poll on your screen now. The first question is, what CK-12 resources have you used previously with your students? This is a choose all that apply. So just go down that list, and any that you've already have experience you've used with your students, let us know which ones of those apply to you. And then if you keep scrolling, the second question is, how do you plan to use CK-12 in the coming months or year? So it's asking what your future plans are. So while you all are responding to that poll, why don't I go ahead and bring on Carl, who's going to be leading the presentation today.
Sure. Thanks so much, Lindsay, and greetings to everybody. Lindsay listed quite an impressive list of countries and places that everybody's from, but I think, Lindsay, you forgot one that is very key here, because we have somebody who's joined us today from Palm Springs, California, where I just looked up. And it's going to have a high today of 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which translates to 46 degrees Celsius. So please put in the chat window if you can beat those highs today for Palm Springs. Possibly the hottest user on CK-12 today is coming to us from Palm Springs. So that is a warm place there. But beyond that, we're going to be just finishing up with the poll now. So if you want to make sure you go ahead and click your responses, and then we'll go ahead and share those in a few seconds. And there they are. So Lindsay, kind of what do we see here?
Not terribly surprised, Carl. We've got a lot of users who have been joining these webinars who haven't had a chance to use CK-12 with students yet. So it looks like that's the winning number there, although looks like we've got lots of experience, you know, and scattered throughout those resources. And then most people, this kind of applies to you as you're talking through these strategies, Carl. It looks like most people plan to use this to supplement their curriculum or plan to use practice or quizzes to see student progress. Of course, some people are going to use as core curriculum, but the bulk is with the supplemental.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. And I think, you know, the first thing I want to say is my goal with this webinar is that you'll leave with some things that you're able to use with your students in your classroom, whether that's a virtual classroom or you actually get to meet your students in person. We hope that we can give you some strategies to start using CK-12 tomorrow. So first off, I just want to recognize, as we all know, there is a global pandemic currently going on, and so many educators have been working overtime to keep our students learning. And I just want to say thanks to all of you. You're out here today trying to learn new things and trying to make the learning experience for your students the best. And I really want to thank you for that. And CK-12 is just here to support you do that. So I think the easiest way to get started with CK-12 is to find the CK-12 FlexBook 2.0 that matches your course and then start assigning lessons to get your students learning. All you have to do is go to www.ck12.org and scroll down to what do you want to teach today. And if you don't see this, that means you might be signed in as a student. There's a little button at the top that you can click as, you know, view the teacher version. But this is your starting point. And by clicking on these branches, you will be able to access the newest and best that CK-12 offers. If you do searches through like our search bar, you might end up in some older content, which is still useful, but I think I want to have you start here. Choose a subject and then look through the table of contents for that FlexBook. In the table of contents, you'll see all the chapters of that FlexBook, and then you can click on the expanding arrow to see the titles of lessons in that chapter. So for example here, there's a chapter on cell biology, and then I can see there's a membrane proteins lesson that I can use. So this is a really great way to find content to start using CK-12. Up next, we'll be talking about assigning a FlexBook 2.0 lesson. Many teachers start using CK-12 as a supplement to their existing curriculum by creating assignments of CK-12 lessons. It can serve as a great resource supporting different ways of learning the content that you're teaching. So let's say you're teaching linear equations in the distributed property that you can see here, and you normally use the Engage New York materials that your district gave you. You can assign the concept using the corresponding lesson on the FlexBook 2.0 platform. Then the students get to explore that concept using a variety of modalities that we offer, and also fill in the gaps that they have by using our adaptive practice, which is available at the bottom of the lesson. You as their teacher and also the students will get valuable information on their performance with this concept. So it's a win-win even if you're using another curriculum. Once you assign the lesson, you'll receive intelligent teacher insights showing you how your students are doing. And remember, these lessons you assign can be the core curriculum, or as a lot of you have stated today, can be used as a supplement to what you're already using. And especially in times of remote learning, CK-12 is a really great resource because the content is digital, therefore the students can access it from wherever they're learning, whether that's their home or your classroom. CK-12's adaptive practice is a great way to do homework because it is an activity that the students do independently without a lot of guidance from you, the teacher, but helps them practice the concepts and fill in the gaps. It's so much better than a worksheet because it goes in and finds out exactly what level each student's at and then encourages them to build on that level. You can choose to assign this daily or even weekly, and maybe like all the concepts of the week, and you tell the students, okay, have all your CK-12 adaptive practice done by Friday. And then you have an assignment, a due date on Friday, and by Friday, they've done all the practice they need to get to the right level. One of the real great benefits that students love is they can do this on their smartphone. Any device, whether it's a smartphone, tablet, Chromebook, laptop, desktop computer, whatever, that has a browser can use CK-12. There's no apps to install. There's none of that other complications. Simply type in ck12.org and your students can get to work. The other benefits that I'll mention is that our adaptive practice has hints available to the students. And these were written by real teachers. And they're the kind of hints that you would give in your class if a student's stuck, but you don't want to just give them the answer. So you give them a little, like, often it's another question, like, why is the denominator smaller than the numerator? So you might take a look and encourage your students to use those hints because they're really great ways to get the students practicing. Another strategy that I encourage you to use is to use the CK-12 concept pages and our FlexBook start pages. We offer both and they're a little bit different. The big difference is the concept page on the left gives you a broad view of that concept, often spanning many grades. And while this is also useful for struggling and advanced students, the FlexBook 2.0 start page for the concept is often a better place to start because it focuses the content for a specific course or a specific grade. And then using the artificial intelligence of FlexBook 2.0 platform, all students, including those struggling and advanced students, get a personalized journey. Simply look through the table of contents of any FlexBook 2.0 to find the start pages of the concepts you'll cover. If you're looking for a progress report, make sure you assign the individual 2.0 lessons or individual modalities so that you get feedback on how your students did. But these concept pages and the start pages are really great ways to offer learning opportunities to your students. This summer, we've put together a brand new product called FlexLets for Summer Learning. And what they are smaller versions of our large FlexBooks. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to just narrow it down to the key concepts that are most important for our students. So they're the perfect size for summer learning, and they help your students review what they've learned this year. Some of our FlexLets also preview some of the key concepts in the next year. So I encourage you to go take a look at these FlexLets, and remember, of course, like everything we do on CK-12, it's all free. All right, up next, another strategy is to use our PLIX interactives as we are trying to create lessons and learning opportunities for our students in remote learning situations, because a lot of people are staying home now. And so we at CK-12 have these interactives called PLIX, which stands for Play, Learn, Interact, and Explore. And yes, we took some liberties on the X for Explore, but there you go. So the PLIX are really great ways for your students to dive into a concept, a single concept, move something around, explore with it, see what it does. And then on the left-hand side, they're offered a series of challenge questions. And the really exciting thing is the last question is always an open discussion question, which gets students thinking more deeply about this concept. So here you can see if a train started to climb at an elevation of 0 feet instead of 10 feet, how would the equation of the track change? So we're asking them to do it a little differently, to think a little more deeply in order to make sure they've learned everything they need to. And the PLIX are great because they can be used as a warm-up, a mid-class activity, even as an exit ticket or homework. But the idea here is get the students experiencing the concept. A lot of our open discussion questions, you'll see have links to them to the CK-12 Cafe, which is our discussion forum. And there they will see full-on discussions happening about this concept. Once again, in times of school closures, it's wonderful to have a resource which gets the students doing more than just the basics. And having conversations with students around the world is a great way to do that. Another great strategy for learning is our simulations. And these are in science, but they are used by a lot of different other subjects. The simulations take an idea and they show the student, they immerse the student into that situation. And then they offer them controls and variables and sliders that they can control to see how things get changed. We even have slider questions that they can answer, whether individually or with other students, where they get to really explore deeply and understand by using the CK-12 simulations. We also challenge the students to upload their own real-world examples of concepts similar to this one. So we think this is a really great way, especially during the global pandemic, that you can use this whether it's in person with your students or as a remote learning activity. Yet another strategy, we have 2,500 real-world applications. And these are great solutions to the often asked question by students, when am I ever going to use this? And so this is about engaging students, showing them how this affects their lives. And these are a great way to use as a warm-up or maybe even as a pre-activity before your Zoom meeting starts with your class. But these are really nice because they really get the students thinking about the concept in a meaningful and applicable way. And a lot of the times we are thinking of ways to help model a concept or get them to analyze things. And these real world applications or RWAs are really great ways to do that. So if you haven't seen them yet, go check them out. So If you're going to leave with one thing today that Carl's suggesting to you as a strategy for getting started with CK-12, definitely finding a CK-12 FlexBook and quickly changing the scope and sequence to make it perfect for your course is the one thing that I challenge you to do here. When you start with a CK-12 book, it's not inevitably going to be perfect for your class. So you're going to need to take some stuff out and put some things in and, you know, kind of reorder it maybe. And this you can easily do. We had a lot of our teachers tell us that they were able to customize a book in less than a day that they were able to use with their students throughout the year. Then the nice thing is once you have kind of put together the initial book and started using it with your students, it's not locked in. It's a living document. It's living curriculum. You can add things in, and we'll talk about later. You can have your students add in content, which makes it even more meaningful and engaging because it's students helping other students learn. But definitely take a look and you'll see that it's not hard to click the customize button from the table of contents and begin matching your scope and sequence exactly. For all of our 2.0 lessons, we have related content available over in the toolbar, meaning that it's additional content, maybe that's catering towards a specific subset of your students, like your struggling readers for second language learners. Or maybe you might have a group of advanced students and you want them to do a specific activity because they already know some of the things that the activities in the lesson do. So this is where you have the option of taking a look at what CK-12 offers in the related content category, and you can add in your own things. So an example of this might be, I once flipped my geometry class and I created these little dorky, like 10-minute lessons. And, you know, I loved that because that was part of their homework is they had to watch my dorky little video and then they had to answer a few questions on it. So this would be the kind of thing I might be able to include in my version of the CK-12 geometry book, for example, but maybe our school has a version and I'm just, you know, I'm customizing even further the CK-12 geometry book that my school put together for all the geometry teachers. Another idea that you can do is every 2.0 lesson in math and science has adaptive practice attached to it. Now, sometimes the lesson doesn't exactly fit what you're teaching, so you change it. But then the questions as part of the adaptive practice then might not necessarily apply. So what we suggest you do, instead of just using the CK-12 adaptive practice, create your own customized quiz that gets presented as the questions asked at the bottom of the lesson. So we give you great flexibility here to ask the style of questions that you need, or you know, the way, the manner, or whatever it is specifically that you need to attack in your questions. This also applies to all the many subjects that CK-12 doesn't offer content for. So for example, let's say it's social studies and I'm writing a California social studies lesson, and CK-12 has 150,000 questions and none of them are about California social studies. So I'm going to have to provide those questions, and I can easily put together a quiz that is presented at the end of the lesson, and that when my students answer those questions, I get the feedback as the teacher. And especially in times of school closure, this is really valuable information. The next idea that I want to share with you is use our enhanced lessons with lots of interactives and questions. By picking a FlexBook 2.0, for example, in mathematics, you're going to see that it has lots of different activities in it, different modalities we call it, including embedded interactives, videos, and maybe even some of our brand new inline questions. So you can add whatever it is you want in these lessons. And I've seen teachers who embed their Google Slides presentation, and it's just part of the lesson, and that way it's all together as part in one big package, making it a lot easier for students to make sure they find stuff and use it properly. One of the most exciting things about CK-12, since everything is customizable, it gives you the opportunity to customize and to really engage your student. As you see here, we have an example from one of our districts over in Tennessee that included a picture of Dustin Lynch, who graduated from their district, in a beautiful lesson that they put together about the Grand Ole Opry. Consider getting the students involved in this process. Have them contribute images that they take themselves or artwork that they've made that relates to the content in the lesson. Have them collect data on local ecosystems and then use that as the example data for future classes. Split up the topics among your students and have them make review videos that can be included in your FlexBook to help students learn these topics in the future. You can even have maybe your advanced students write their own inline questions, including incorrect answers, and then feedback on those incorrect answers that you will incorporate as part of your lesson. And this is really, really powerful. And I want you to think hard and long. Obviously, when you're just getting started with CK-12, don't take all this on. Just start using it. But then over time, what you're going to find is, especially like from some of our advanced students, having to create these inline questions and think about what would be some popular incorrect answers, and then what feedback would you give for students that chose those incorrect answers. That's an outstanding activity for our advanced students to do, to really help them understand deeply the concept. So as you move forward this year, really take some opportunities to engage your students by creating localized content. One of the exciting things that we've done at CK-12 is we offer now content that has been written from the ground up, fully aligned with the Common Core state standards in mathematics. We do have a mathematics browser, and as a teacher, you can find that under the Explore menu. Once on the Common Core page, you can click on Concepts and see the CK-12 concepts that relate to each core standard. Better yet, you can pick the FlexBook option, and that'll take you to the newest FlexBook that will not only cover the content standard, but are designed with the Common Core philosophy in mind. So they're full of interactives and engaging activities to help students construct knowledge. If you do use the concept correlation, you might find it useful to search for the matching concept within a brand new 2.0 FlexBook to see the latest resources on that topic. For our science friends, NGSS has been a large kind of direction that a lot of teachers are going and states are going. And I think with the idea of both the next generation science standards and that idea of phenomena, CK-12 is a really big support there because we have so many real life examples. We have our PLIX, we have our simulations, all of which support kind of the approach that NGSS is taking. So when you're logged in as a teacher, go to the top Explore menu once again and click on NGSS. And then from there, you'll see the individual standards and all the corresponding concepts on CK-12. There you'll see links to concept pages to address the DCIs. And as I mentioned, our simulations are great ways to digitally set up a phenomena for your students to study. So an example of that here are these questions that open our sim. And here's some examples. Why do diamonds sparkle? How does a capacitive touch screen work? And finally, how efficient is a wind turbine? So these are interesting questions. And, as science teachers, we want our students thinking deeply and having to bring multiple concepts together and apply them in order to think about a concept. So please use our simulations. And there, we've just heard from so many science teachers that are trying to get their students to think like scientists. And the simulations are a great way to implement the idea of the phenomena. Thinking outside the box with FlexBooks and Sims is really important. For example, one science teacher who also coaches lacrosse used a FlexBook structure to create a resource book with drills and fundamentals, including text and videos, to help his team learn and practice. So a FlexBook about lacrosse. While our simulations cover physics and science, earth science and space and physical science standards, you can use various ones in other classrooms. So for example, a water fountain sim can be used in a pre-calculus class when talking about parametric equations, or the at the crossroads sim can be a great starting point to discuss trade. Even better, team up with a colleague across the discipline and create a lesson that spans both subject areas and helps the students see the relevance of one subject in another class. I'm always a big advocate of getting educators to use Twitter. And if you haven't done so, especially in times of this global pandemic when we're not hanging out in the teacher lounge anymore, it is a great way to combat isolation and really learn from experts out in the field. These are teachers that are doing stuff that have some technology experience and they're willing to share it with everybody else. Imagine getting some best teaching practices from leading teachers, and it's all free and they share it, no problem. So the first thing when you sign up and join Twitter, please go ahead and help me out by following at CK-12 Foundation, and you'll find that we share a lot and we keep you informed about what's new at CK-12. But there are so many other great teaching resources. And I have a list here, but if you want to use the chat window right now, go ahead and put in any of your favorite hashtags that you follow on Twitter and share them with the people out there today. But ones that I like are blended learning, personalized learning, OER, open educational resources. Go Open is a really great movement that's helped people use OER. 21st Century Skills, EdTech, Math, SciChat, and STEM. And you're going to find out that there's so much out there. And when you're trying to put stuff together, especially if you're new to kind of doing it all digitally, Twitter is a really, really good resource for you to use, and follow CK-12 because you'll stay on top of things. All right, as I mentioned earlier in the past, I have flipped my classroom, and it's a great way to have the students doing the appropriate work at home so you can use your in-person or your Zoom time to do activities they won't be able to do on their own. So homework is now fun using CK-12 videos and interactives. Also, our PLIX and SIM are really great activities to assign as homework in a flipped classroom. And even our adaptive practice is really good for the students to be able to identify and fill in the gaps of a concept before they get to class or before they join your class, and and have to do an activity where they have cemented foundational knowledge. So flip your classroom and use CK-12 to do it. Lindsay, I have been talking for a few minutes here already, it seems like, and I'm wondering if there might be some questions that have come in.
Lots of good information so far, Carl. Our team's been typing some answers to questions, but they've left you a few things to demo. So I think I'm going to start by having you show a concept page. There's a question. Carl recently showed a concept heading with both CK-12 and user-created content option buttons. I don't believe I've seen that type of screen through my work. So
Sure. And just know, we went to concept-based learning in 2012, and we created these concept pages, which can still be accessed today and are really great places as I'm piecing together supplemental content that will be useful when I'm teaching. So let's go here, and I think in my example earlier was motion. So I have a choice of searching all of CK-12 or specifically within one of our FlexBooks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search all of CK-12, and then you'll notice some of them are lessons and videos, but some of them are full concepts here. And it says concepts. So I can even filter off to the side where it only shows me concepts involving motion. I've got motion, circular motion, projectile motion, problem solving, but I'm just going to go to the basic motion in physics. And here what you're going to see is a whole page of different ways of learning motion. Or as we like to say at CK-12, different modalities. You can see here I have some lessons. I have 4 simulations about motion. I've got a PLIX interactive, some video study aids, activities, practice. There's so many different things that you have available to you. And this is a great place when you're looking for content, type and say, maybe I'll do slope. Let's do a math thing. And there's a slope concept right there, and I'll go in and you can see there's just immediately lots of different activities and videos and things that you can do in order to explore the idea of slope. So that use our search bar and search of all over CK-12 and maybe filter it by concept. Okay. And I can't see the Q&A window, Lindsay, so I need you to feed me another question.
I've got more for you. Question about the cafe. So I'm going to have you navigate to the cafe. Earlier, when you were showing off our PLIX, you mentioned that they end in open discussion questions. And so the question from our user is when you said that students from all around the world can see it, can you clarify how is this a worldwide classroom as opposed to just a regular static classroom?
Sure, and kind of along the way to get to the CK-12 Cafe, I want to show you one of my favorite features of the CK-12 website, and that's our Explore menu at the top here. And this is where you're going to have direct access to some of the many resources that we offer on CK-12, including our FlexBook 2.0s here. You can see a list of schools and books they put together, study guides, adaptive practice, direct links to browsers for all the simulations and PLIX, and even the CCSS and NGSS, our FlexLets, the webinars, but more importantly, to answer your question, here's the cafe. And the cafe is a discussion forum, and that's why it's worldwide, because we don't limit it to just the kids in your class. Well, this is the opportunity to have our students discussing about science, about math, or even if you're an educator, I would encourage you to go take a look at our Jumpstart for Educators forum. And this is where you can get advice from other teachers about things that you're doing. I'm going to click into the PLIX corner because this is where those global conversations happen about the open discussion questions at the end of each PLIX. So here we can see there's a geometric visual representation of square root. And so there are 70 answers up there. So you can see there's some really great conversation happening in here. And it was the Math PLIX of the Week last December, but conversations are still going on. And you can see we have a lot more here that are listed, and there's just some great content. So that's how the CK-12 discussion forums in the CK-12 Cafe are great places to have global discussions.
Okay, last question we're going to tackle is related to pacing. We have a couple of users who asked, does like one chapter correspond to one class period, or how should they interpret the kind of our table of contents as far as time spent on lesson in class?
Sure. And my solution, my answer to that is math and science do it a little bit differently because there are so many more concepts in science. So what I want you to do is think about the math on CK-12 is broken into lessons that are all about 45 minutes. Science, on the other hand, has content that has been broken up into mini concepts. And probably you'll be able to complete 2 or 3 mini concepts in a lesson. So maybe they're 15, 20 minutes each. And you'll see that because it's not a whole lesson that you'll find, for example, if I go to the osmosis read in the life science book. And so the idea here is you would be combining activities to expand that, or you would be just combining concepts to be able to teach multiple concepts in the same day.
Okay, please keep your questions coming in. I'm going to take the presentation back over from Carl for a moment to navigate us to our next big topic, which is on differentiation, learning, and literacy.
Excellent. Yeah, so first we're going to talk about differentiated lessons and assignments, and we're going to be able to learn about that and creating multiple classes, as we call them, to help differentiate for your students. And then we're going to talk about improving learning and literacy. And this is key because CK-12 has some really amazing features that you can start using in your class tomorrow. And we'll take a look at those. So let's get started. So the first one I want to talk about is the strategy of creating differentiated little classes or subclasses to address different levels of students in your class. So on CK-12, we do offer that you can create a class, but a class might just have 1 or 2, 3 students in it based on what you need for your students. I might have 3 students with very low language skills in English. So maybe they're all from Central America and speak Spanish and have academic Spanish. So I might assign them some YouTube videos that I found talking about teaching of science, but in Spanish, or with Spanish subtitles. So I can do that here, where I've put those 3 kids in a CK-12 class, and maybe I call it the purple group. And the purple group gets all my Spanish videos. And maybe my advanced students are in another group, and they get some extension activities that, that normally other students don't get. So we're going to use those to help us differentiate. So don't be thrown off by the word classes, because it's just groups. I'm going to create differentiated groups based on what the needs are of my students. And remember, you can still include these students for class level assignments. I can still create an assignment that is assigned to everybody in the class. Our adaptive practice is really good as challenge and support, because in the first 3 questions, we figure out what level each student's at, and then we begin to personalize the experience based on their level. So everybody's learning at the appropriate level. So my number 2 thing, other than creating the scope and sequence FlexBook, the second most important thing that I want to get you to leave and try out today is this adaptive practice. If you haven't assigned adaptive practice this next week, or when you get back to school, give it a try. And I think you're going to see something magical here. And I always think our adaptive practice is our secret sauce, because as students answer questions and then they begin to struggle, our learning platform pauses and it says, you're struggling here. How about you look at this content, this interactive, this video, and learn this that we've identified that you don't know, and then go back and get caught up with your class. And this, for teachers, is invaluable, and for students too, because I know if I have a class of 30, 35 students, I don't know where all my students' gaps are, and CK-12's adaptive practice is the resource that helps you do this. Then afterward, it creates reports to help identify for the student and the teacher what's been happening. And remember, the adaptive practice is automatically included when you assign a lesson in a FlexBook 2.0. I mentioned these earlier, but I'll bring them up again because I really want to drive them home. I think some of our newest math books have inline questions throughout the lessons. And these are really beneficial because as the student's learning, they get asked questions, and then we clear up any misconceptions by giving feedback. You can see here on this one here, it says try again, and it has some feedback based on the incorrect answer that they selected. So this instant feedback is useful for all levels of students. But the nice thing is you can create inline questions for difficult ideas to really get the students beyond, and over the hurdle. And as I mentioned, this is a great activity for advanced students to do, where they're the ones creating the inline questions. And they can even create them on CK-12, and then when they're done, they just share them with you, and you can choose to include them in your lesson. All right, simulations are also really good for challenging your students and supporting them. We have science teachers who turn off the graphs, because there's an option to do that, and then sketch the different predictions of what's going to be happening in the simulation without seeing them on the graphs. And then also on the page, you've got other little challenge me moments and support tutorial videos, concept page links, and even worksheets where the students can download them and print them out, or at least view them online, that have been written as a companion to these simulations. So we've been trying to put together all the information and all the support materials that you need to be successful with simulations. Another great feature of our simulations is they've been translated by native speaker into many different languages. And so, I know German and Korean and Spanish, and there's so many that are there now. So if you are coming to us from a country around the world, we we are pleased that we have so many languages, and if you're interested in helping us get a simulation translated for your language, we'd love to work with you on that, and contact us at jumpstart@ck12.org. You can also customize your own slider questions or have students come up with some. And these are really great ways to make sure that the students have really deep knowledge. The next chart here shows the misconceptions that are possible that CK-12 simulations help fix. So for example, there's a misconception that, for example, that particles of solid have no motion. Our Building Bridges sim helps dispel that misconception. Mass and weight are the same thing. So our astronaut training chamber helps students understand that mass and weight are not the same thing, and so many others here that because simulations are real, students have an easier time learning with simulations. And once again, all these simulations are a great way to teach using the phenomena idea that is a part of NGSS. PLIX Interactives are another great resource. I've talked about them briefly already, but the idea that the students are actively doing, are exploring, are playing in a sandbox. This is the vertical line test from mathematics, from Algebra 2. And going through and moving that red line and seeing how many times it's intercepting the green shape is really a great way to get the students to understand if something is a function. And we have 1,200 of these interactives spanning every branch of math and science for middle school and high school. Another nice thing is if the student is struggling and you've assigned this and they're working at home, there's a direct link to the CK-12 concept page where they can learn it their way. They can go choose to watch a video or do something else, but that's all included in our PLIX Interactives. And then of course, as your students explore the interactive, they will be answering questions and even linking through to discussing it with others. And we have a video now, and that's why there's nothing on the screen. So let's go ahead and watch the video, and we will I think it's about highlighting. And I think Anna's going to talk about using our highlighting tool. And I'm not hearing any audio here. So I think we're gonna go fix.
Oh no, let me try that again, Carl.
Well, if you want, I'll just provide the audio that Anna would have said. Hi, my name's Anna Castillo, and I use this great version of CK-12 highlighting.
Sure.
Or maybe we don't want to do that, and we'll actually hear from Anna. So I want to say, though, for people joining us, we did this webinar yesterday, and right about now is when we started having some major technology issues. So we really felt for all of our educators out there that face technology issues every day, and we've gone most of the summer without any major technology issues. And indeed, now it's nice that we got to experience it ourselves yesterday. So this is what we'll call a minor technology issue. Yesterday, Lindsay's computer made a big noise and then shut down. That's a major technology issue.
Let me just exit back out
all right,
and show this video.
Sure.
Let me stop sharing because I have to click a button to say
you have to click a button. It's not always the case. There's always a button that you need to
share
click.
my computer sound. Okay, let's try this again. Here's Anna.
All right, here's Anna.
A student has more than one learning modality, learns through multiple modalities. A feature that CK-12 provides is the highlighting with different colors. So I'm able to not only emphasize a key point, but I'm able to assign it to a specific color that can also trigger maybe another memory for them.
The highlighting is pretty amazing, and as Anna was talking about there, she uses it to really help their students learn how to process and synthesize academic text. And I know that Anna used a system where she had trained all of her students to highlight the thesis statement in the lesson using one color, and then another color, let's say blue, was all the supporting statements that support and prove that thesis statement. And we know that the talking to the text is a great strategy, and even having the students annotate and create notes that are summaries of what they learned in that lesson. These are all great strategies to get our students at all levels to be doing it. And then the nice thing about in FlexBook 2.0, by clicking in the toolbar on notes and highlighting, you get everything that has been annotated or highlighted all in one area. And this is really useful if you're having your students study for a quiz or a test. Tell them to focus on the things that they've already pulled out of the lesson. And you know, these are things, whatever level you're working with your students, these are great skills to have that will serve them off through university. All right, one of the kind of cool things that we offer at CK-12 is the ability to instantly translate a lesson. So if you're on a CK-12 lesson, go down to the bottom and you'll see a little Google symbol there and select language. And you can go choose Chichewa or Spanish, and instantly everything on the page, as you can see in the example here, we have it translated into Spanish, and it's wonderful. And I've even seen it where the students have their home language, like Spanish, on their phone, where they're looking at the CK-12 lesson on their phone in Spanish while using their Chromebook and looking at the same lesson in English. And while our second language learners are creating that academic language in English, it's nice to have the support from their home language. Parents are a really important part of education, especially now where they're often the substitute teacher at home. And so by sharing concept pages with your parents, send them the links every week, and then they might want to review it and take a look and be able to have discussions at dinner with their kids. And we've gotten some really great feedback from parents or through, and from educators both, where the parents really appreciate this. You can also share the URL of the FlexBook that you've created for your course. And remember, a FlexBook is essentially a digital textbook. So it has a table of contents, and parents are familiar with the idea of a textbook, and they love having access to what their students are learning. And then of course, if they speak a language other than English, having the ability to instantly translate the content used in your course into their home language is really valuable. And often our parents who come to the United States and are a little uncomfortable with English, they love that they have access to seeing what's happening in their kids' lives through the CK-12 platform's instant translatability. Up next, we have a video from Cynthia, and she's a principal down in El Paso Independent School District, and she's going to talk about the power of CK-12's Translate feature.
I met a parent who was struggling with supporting his daughter because he did not speak English very well. So I brought up the CK-12 on my iPad. I quickly showed him how he can change the language, and he was nearly in tears, and he felt just so excited that now that he could help his daughter, which was emotional for me too, knowing that this is what CK-12 is about. This is what we want our parents, our language learners, no matter where they come from, no matter what language they speak, they need to find a place in our classroom, and CK-12 helps us to do that.
I just want to remind...
I don't think... Oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
No, what were you going to say, Carl?
I just want to say, I don't think anyone could have said it better, that Cynthia really talked about the power that this gives parents and the connecting with our parents in a way that's really meaningful. So I think, Lindsay, because we're running a little short on time, can we push through to cover the assessment, progress, and remediation? And then we'll plan on taking all the questions that are in the Q&A window and staying on past the hour mark to answer all those questions that's still needing, but while respecting the fact some people might be leaving us at the hour mark. All right, so with assessment and progress and remediation, we're going to talk about learning versus assessment, and then we're going to move on and do progress and remediation and how CK-12 can be used for strategies on that. So let's wrap this up. So learning versus assessment. So for me, many CK-12 resources are designed with learning in mind. For example, our simulations, inline questions, and PLIX interactives are all meant to help students learn. We provide direct feedback and offer hints and other supports. These modalities give incomplete and complete scores when you assign them, but they don't give more information than that. If you want to see how students are doing on questions, we suggest you use the adaptive practice because it gives a completion score and a skill level, and then quizzes are a great way to see specific student progress. Another great thing you can do is create a quiz and use it as a pre or post test. They assess knowledge and they show growth, which is a lot of what we're being asked to monitor now, especially when the students are not coming in to our classes. Quizzes in the CK-12 FlexBook program are really useful because, as I mentioned earlier, you can pick exactly the questions that you want. You can customize the existing practice, or you can pull in a quiz that you've already made. While this removes the practice that adapts automatically to students' performance, this is one way you can tailor your lessons to specifically your assignments and the questions you want your students to see. Another thing you could do is just leave the adaptive practice on there and then create your own pre and post test. Another new feature that we added recently is now when doing practice or quizzes, the students can pause them. And a lot of teachers gave us feedback. My students need to be able to pause the quiz and work on it later. And so we listened to you, and we were so happy that last year we were able to incorporate that feedback that we heard from you. All right, reports are another great way for taking a look at how your students are doing. Here you can see we have a heat map, and the heat map visually highlights which students are maybe needing some remediation. But information like how long did the students spend on the quiz, how many questions did they answer, what level were they at. So by assigning lessons on CK-12, you're given the feedback. But if you don't assign the lesson, we don't give you the feedback. So make sure you are assigning to your classes. And whether, I haven't mentioned our LMSs yet, but we do integrate with Google Classroom and Schoology and Canvas. So, those LMSs support work that you've already got set up, but you can still use CK-12. And the reports and things like that are a great way to do that. Finally, we have insights available for any lesson assigned in CK-12. So it's going to show you how much time they spent on the lesson, what skill level they got to in the practice. And now one of the newest features is you get to see a histogram off to the left-hand side that shows you exactly where did they spend time on the lesson. Did they watch the video? Did they do the interactive? Did they answer the questions? So you'll be able to really get some great information, and then maybe it helps you when you do an intervention afterward. We also offer recommendations where, for example, there'll be a little green dot that flashes, and that then connects to maybe something that Ryan, I can see this is Ryan's lesson. Ryan might not understand that concept. And then if you click on it, you'll see a question that corresponds to that word that he missed, and that he might need some remediation on this. So we offer a lot of great insights here, and we're continually adding more and more. So, using the CK-12 FlexBook 2.0 platform is a great way for you to support your students, especially as you're putting together hybrid lessons for this next year. So Lindsay, do you want to wrap this up and maybe give some final information, and then I'll come back and answer any questions that are still here?
Sounds like a great plan. We just recently launched our August slate of webinars. So today, this is the last of our Certified Educator Program live webinars that are kind of the hour-long webinars that count towards certification. That whole program is being revamped in August, so it's going to look different. But what we're offering teachers and parents, students in August are shorter webinars that I think are highly topical. One called CK-12, A Solution for Flexible Learning. It's really a 30-minute overview of how to maximize CK-12 for any learning situation, whether that's remote or hybrid or in class. We're here for you. So going to give some ideas on using us for all those different situations. And then we're having 30-minute webinars for each of our learning management integrations. We're going to do a couple webinars about Google Classroom and CK-12, and then we'll do one on Canvas, and we'll do one on Schoology. So if you're interested in joining us for any of those webinars, you can go to ck12.org/webinars and get registered. And then, like I said, our program's being revamped. So right now, if you visit ck12.org/certified, I think you'll find a pre-registration button that's going to ask for your information if you want to be notified in August about our relaunch of the program. Or you can just keep an eye out for emails that we're going to be sending you when we've relaunched the program. If you have any questions right now about where you stand with your certification, if you've completed some webinars and aren't sure how you're making this transition, you can always email jumpstart@ck12.org. It's a great place to do it. One more tiny URL for you. We like to get your feedback. If you have just 2 or 3 minutes right now and you wouldn't mind telling us what went well in today's webinar and what we could be doing better, this tinyurl.com/ck12feedback1920, that is the place to do it. We read all of your comments and we really appreciate it. So we are right at the hour mark. Any of you who need to jump off, thank you for joining us. You're welcome to head off today. Know that we are here to support you. You can email jumpstart@ck12.org and you can find us on the socials. We are going to get back into that Q&A window and do some more demos of some user questions. So I will pass it back to Carl.
So I was able to find my Q&A window, which is always useful. And the first question's about the worksheets and simulations. And I thought, once again, I'll show you how to get there because getting there is half the fun. All right, so in CK-12, here I am on the home page. And I'm going to click that very useful Explore menu because it's about, this time, simulations. So from the Explore menu, I choose Simulations. And this is going to open up our Browse page for simulations. So let's say I'm doing this reflection and mirrors and plane mirrors interactive here called Prom Night. Well, a lot of kids didn't have prom this year. It was a big deal. What size mirror do you need to buy, need to see your whole entire body? And that's the big guiding question that's answered in the beginning. But the question that the user asked today is, where is the worksheet? And these little ellipses over here are your answer. And you can see that worksheet is one of the options. So another thing that I want to point out here is that you can get the embed code for this simulation, and then you can embed it inside your lesson on CK-12. And this is really useful because you could put it as a link, but then the link opens up this whole other tab, and sometimes the students forget to come back. They get distracted. So by using embed, you can put the code in and we can show you how to do that. And then maybe this is my other pitch that I'm gonna do at the time. Let's go back to the CK-12 homepage. And if you're looking, you're like, oh yeah, Carl mentioned I can make inline questions, or Carl mentioned I can customize and change the scope of sequence. I encourage you to go under the Explore menu and take a look at all the webinars, because not only do we advertise future webinars, but we also have we have a lot of future webinars coming up. We're going to be busy in August. We have archived versions that you can go and watch right now. And a really good one, for example, is an overview, an hour overview on the CK-12 2.0 platform. And then if you're interested in customizing, this one here about customizing FlexBooks and adaptive practice. Here's one that we put together on how to teach online and learn from home. So this was our school closure solution. And then I'll give a plug for one that Lindsay's working hard on right now, CK-12, a solution for the flexible learning for reopening our schools this fall or this summer. So, there's a lot of great content out there and it's all available on demand.
Carl, you have a request to show how the translation tool works.
Sure. So I'm going to go to one of our outstanding math products here for middle school. Let's go do 7th grade math. These were written, as I mentioned before, from the ground up with all the common core learning progressions in mind. And so here we go. Let's go inside. Expressions, equations, and inequalities.
And actually, I think you're about to knock off another question, so I'm going to interject for just a second. If somebody was asking how to get to that start page that you just landed on.
So the nice thing is directly from the table of contents, when you go into a lesson, you'll be pointed to the start page. And the philosophy about this is not all kids are ready to go jump into a traditional lesson, and maybe they need to go watch a video first. So, or then maybe they need to go do an interactive first. So, you know, depending on what the student's mood is in that moment, we can figure out exactly, you know, they can choose what they'd like to do, or else they can start. But here we are back in the CK-12 lesson about rewriting expressions using the distributive property. And as you can tell, this is a very typical CK-12 robust interactive lesson. Here's an interactive right there with a bunch of questions in it. I'm going to do this one as I drive by. Remember, these inline questions, you get great feedback, and it's specific to the answer that they gave. It's incredible. So I'm going to go down here to the very bottom, as I mentioned, and this is where you're going to select a language. So we can start with Afrikaans, and we can go down to Zulu, both of which are languages in South Africa. They get the A and the Z. But let's go to Spanish. So immediately, here is this lesson in Spanish. And, you know, the nice thing is that all of a sudden, there's no longer a language barrier. And whether my parents are speaking Spanish, or I mentioned Chichewa from Malawi, Africa, you know, immediately then the content is digestible in that local language. And the more we use the Google Translate, the better it becomes. So, you know, I've heard some feedback that not all the languages are as good as Spanish. I'm actually going to go back to English. But the more we use them, they will get better. And so anyway, give it a try and get some feedback from your parents. And so I think there was a question too, Lindsay, is if you've chosen a language that the translated language is part of it. And I believe so. Let's check up here if there's a Spanish in it. You contact support, because I know there is a way for you to send a link, for example, to your Spanish-speaking parents where they won't have to go down and select a language, that'll just automatically be in Spanish.
All right, Carl, question about insights. Are insights provided to the students or only to the teachers?
Most of the insights are provided to the teacher, but some of them that are appropriate for the student are provided. You know, they are, after they've done adaptive practice, the teacher's in control whether they see the answers and things, but they're told what their skill level is, and they're told how much time they spent on the practice, etc. So, you know, we're really excited because, Lindsay, coming up this in the next few months, we're going to be offering class level insights, meaning the CK-12 lesson will be able to tell you your students are struggling with this paragraph right here. They're not understanding it. So that'll be a great way for you to identify, based on data from CK-12 resources that your students are using, what you might need to go back and reteach. So, you know, we're always trying to get better here at CK-12 and offer more and more things that teachers and educators need. And looks like we have a question: how were the classes modified for diverse learners? Well, the diverse learners is actually a very diverse concept, and they can be diverse for many different reasons. We have a lot of special ed students using CK-12, and because it's so customizable, like, you know, the resource teacher can quickly go in, for example, if they need a simplified version or a scaffolded version. We also offer a lot for visual issues under our display settings. We offer black and white or increased size. So there's a lot here. So depending on what kind of diversity you're looking for there, because things are customizable, you'll notice that it is a really good platform where a teacher can quickly go in and make a different version of the lesson as needed or as required by an IEP. And Lindsay, I think our questions might be up.
We've cleared out the questions. So thank you for joining us for this webinar today. You can email us at support@ck12.org if you have any future questions. And we hope to see you on an upcoming webinar.
Absolutely. And a special shout out to everybody behind the scenes today who answered, you know, almost 100 questions. Thanks to all of them. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, folks, and good luck. Stay healthy and wear a mask. Okay.